Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. My name is Michael Ryce. I'm not sure what's happening with Jeanie. She may be experiencing some technical difficulties, but when her voice comes on, she'll let us know, I'm sure. We're delighted that you're here. This is Friday, Aramaic Friday. We get the opportunity to spend some time with Dale Allen Hoffman as we talk about the Aramaic principles of understanding life and healing. And so it's an awesome opportunity for us to have this space with you, and we're delighted to be sharing it. And Jeanie, are you with us yet? Well, it seems not. Let's see if Jeanie's on the switchboard.
I am.
If she's got
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
you
here.
are. Oh, there you are. Hey, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, just the connection was just a little slow and messed up, so it just took me a few minutes.
Life on the road.
Yeah.
Well,
but
I'm
Dale's
sitting
not on yet.
No, okay. Well, I'm sitting at the Magic House in St. Louis, Missouri, with Adeline. We just went in and we're playing in the Magic House and came out to the car to do the radio show, and we'll head back in after it's complete. And our project is that of learning first century Aramaic forgiveness, and our Aramaic Fridays is about the process of understanding how the Aramaic mind looked at the world. And in the first century, that Aramaic language was a language that spread everywhere from the Middle East to the Great Wall of China. And everyone that you met, virtually everyone that you met, spoke the Aramaic language, understood and spoke in that tongue, much as English is so common today. And whenever and Jeanie, maybe if you could just let me know if Dale comes on, but I'll just do a brief introduction, the story that I like to tell about the Aramaic and the depth of understanding which, the mind likes to reject. The mind really, once it's bought a certain set of ideas, the chance of the mind freeing itself from those ideas is pretty slim. It's not something that happens very often, especially if those ideas have been reinforced with fear and with hostility and with energies that are unlike the truth of our human nature, which is, of course, if you hold a newborn child, you know exactly what human nature is. It is that of the active presence of love. But let's imagine that we have a series of workshops we're going to do, and we hear from somebody from, let's say, Russia, and you're the best translator of Russian into English and English into Russian in the world, and you contact us and let us know that you want to be part of that workshop. And so I have a friend that's the best translator of Russian into English and English into Russian in the world, and I ask that person if they'd mind picking you up at the airport and housing you and transporting you back and forth and translating for you, because I, unfortunately, don't speak any Russian. And so you are delighted to do that, and so you pick this gentleman up at the airport. He comes to the workshops. We spend some time together. Maybe the whole group gets together and has lunch, maybe dinner once or twice throughout the period of the week. And at the end of the week, I want our Russian friend to really know how much I appreciate him and how cool I think he is. And so I ask if you would please explain to him my caring for him and that I think that he's really cool. And in your best Russian, you turn to him and you say, Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. You translated my words perfectly, but because I used an idiom, you didn't say a word about what I meant. And that's the challenge when coming out of the Aramaic language. If you go back to Yeshua's words, he says that in order to understand what he's teaching, you have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. I think we can fairly safely assume that he wasn't talking about physical eyes and ears. He was speaking about the ability to understand on a deeper level what he was teaching us. And so much of what comes through from the Greek translations, which tends to be I've got Adeline here. You want to say hello to everybody, Adeline?
Hi.
Say, glad to be with you. Isn't that a sweet voice? In any event, when I speak as though I am when I'm literally translating, when what I really want to do is go to a deeper meaning, then I'm lost. And to expect the Greek mind, there's certain words in the English language, and it takes literally a whole paragraph to translate into English out of the Aramaic. And when I try to read the Aramaic meanings into the Greek, or when the Greeks try to understand the Aramaic meaning without the eyes to see and the ears to hear, without the brain cells, then the meaning is lost. And sadly, the meaning, which was originally meant to be about re-experiencing our human lives as love, was turned into something that the Greeks did have brain cells for, and that was fear and hostility, threat, gods that slaughter, gods that rape their own children, gods that, you look at that Greek mindset and the brain cells that come from those Greek gods, and it's no wonder many people are quaking in fear when they think of God, or totally reject the idea of God. And what we're looking to do today is to go back to the original Aramaic understanding and capture those meanings. And to assist us in doing that, we've got Dale Allen Hoffman, who's what I like to call a practical scholar, someone who's taking the ideas from the Aramaic and bringing them forward into the world in very practical, real, and usable ways. And you can find his information on his website, which is www.daleallenhoffman.com. Dale, how do you be, sir?
I be amazing. Just before the interview, I literally just wrote the last words of my first book. It's pretty...
oh, congratulations!
A lot has happened, actually, in the last 7 days. Right now I'm in Sebring, Florida, and I've been spending time, in the center of Florida, finishing up my writing between events that I had in Melbourne, Florida last weekend, and I've got Fort Pierce next weekend. And it's amazing because right after the show last Friday, I sent the first 2 sections out of the 3 sections of my book. I sent them to a publishing consultant, a guy by the name of Hal Zena Bennett, who he's written books with Dr. Phil McGraw and Shakti Gawain and Gabrielle Roth. If anybody remembers the book, The Holotropic Mind, from Stanislav Grof, about 20 years ago, he wrote that book with Stan. He was the co-writer there, right on the front cover. Anyway, I sent my first 2 sections to Hal, and I was doing everything I could to stay present. I did a few sort of semi-worksheets on a pad of paper, just writing some things out of how I was feeling, a little bit of nerves. But I did my best to stay in the moment, and I was not expecting, though I don't think I would have been too surprised if I got sort of a terse response of oh, well, we can work on it and make it better. But I didn't get that kind of response. It was the response was whoa, he really, 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 really was incredibly enthusiastic, and even went so far as to give me lots of personal stories from his own life, how he felt that it really resonated a lot of things for him, and he immediately started thinking of different publishers who would be interested. And anyway, it was amazing because he went and read through just the first section of the book and wrote me this long email, and it felt so great because he was telling me that he even felt even grammatically and with editing and things like that, he didn't think that the work needed a lot of editing before publishers saw it. So now I'm really, I'm excited because so much of my heart and soul went into it. And I went over that first section of the book about 30 times, rereading it and rereading it and rereading it and tuning it. And then the second section, rereading it and rereading it. So now I've finished the 3rd section, and I'm getting ready to go into sort of tuning this up, and I'll have it to him by early next week. And then the process is going to move a lot faster than I thought. I was expecting that I would end up having to go and get an agent and things like that to market the book to publishers. I'm not going to self-publish this. I was clear on that. Not that I have anything, that it's necessarily better with a publisher, but it's just in terms of getting the message out there quick. I've done the self thing long enough, and I'll probably get back to self-publishing at some point. But I'm just excited to get it out there, and it's I'm probably within a couple of months, 3 months at the most, to actually having a deal done. And my goal is to have this book coming out by spring of next year, so it looks like that's going to happen. It's pretty exciting, though. Am I still on?
Excuse me, my mute button was on. I was just saying congratulations. That's awesome that you're getting that feedback, and I look forward to having it out there and being able to represent it to all of our audiences. That's just...
It's exciting. It's been a lot of work, and I'm already actually I've already got about between a third and a half of the second book finished, which is going to go into each of the letters of the Aramaic and Hebrew alphabets and how those letters were written, which of course is pretty profound when you go back a few thousand years, and also what those letters and sounds represented going back into ancient times, and how those sounds ultimately became puzzle pieces to create the more modern Aramaic and Hebrew languages. And I talk about towing those and going deeper into, like you were saying in the beginning, it really doesn't matter that my translation fits into some kind of ideology or framework or dogma or theology or any of that stuff. That's all, to me, that's all death. I mean, that chokes off the true meaning of the words. To me, it's what's the widest possible nuance of meaning that this teaching or phrase or words in front of me can possibly mean, understanding that that's probably hardly just scratching the outer surface of what Yeshua may have been intending in those meanings, and understanding that it's not about what the common everyday yokel was thinking about what those words meant back then, but understanding that when it's coming from an avatar, someone who is truly awake, we can't just stop at what the common meanings are. And this is something that I really do take a lot of flack for in the scholarly world, because I dare to say, look, if you still have question marks above these words here, and you're not really understanding on an experiential level all of the possibilities of what this could mean, then you've pulled the plug out of the wall and your job's not finished yet. I keep telling a lot of these people, I'm like, we need to put the key back into the car, start the engine again, and finish our work, because so much of the work is unfinished. It rests in theology and dogma and religion, and that's non-being to me. I mean, to me, that's it's just the conceptual mind. It's not the direct living experience. And hopefully this book, I see that vision, that this book will at least help loosen some of the division between the two different sides of the coin, between the scientific and the scholarly, and understanding that the scholarly can't exist without the scientific, and the scientific side, if it wants to embrace the depth, needs to be able to embrace the mystery. Otherwise, there will be no new scientific discovery in that. And I'm meaning just in terms of the language itself. So we have to be open.
Well, and when you hear Yeshua talking about, I come to connect you to the Spirit of Truth, that the teaching was meant to put you into direct relationship with the active presence of the love of God. It wasn't meant to pacify your mind with ideas and doctrines and dogmas that weren't alive and didn't bring you that direct aliveness. And then to teach people how to remove that which was in themselves that was not direct aliveness, which of course is called forgiveness. And the Greeks took that one and turned that one backward into, you hear the whole world today talking about how I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. My live direct experience is terror and trauma, and it's all your fault, so I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook. And if my live direct experience is terror or trauma, it's time for me to start to really honor my relationship with love, really truly step up to the plate and develop relationship with and trust in the Creator, rather than my trust in my hostility and fear-based mind. That, at any given moment, if it's my direct experience, I can dismantle it. I can take it apart, that process of forgiveness. And when I do, I'll actually come back into relationship with the Creator, back into relationship with love, which was the real purpose of Yeshua's words to begin with, to give people that direct experience and instructions on how to do that. So it's exciting to hear what you're getting ready to publish and take to the next level and assist us in making it available to the world. It's fabulous.
I'm excited. It's been a long time coming, and I've said too, in the introduction to the book, the introduction is the only thing that's not completely written. It's kind of partially written, but I'm sending that manuscript off to California before that. But right in the introduction to the book, I start off pretty almost within the first couple paragraphs saying that this toning the words of Jesus does not in any way take the place of developing eyes that see and ears that hear, because what will happen is people will go to the toning as some sort of some sort of ends to, like, almost like it itself is somehow something miraculous, when it's not really that. It's about being open in the experience. And I say right in the introduction that tell everybody, you've got to get that base of what true forgiveness means. Otherwise, you're really not even going to comprehend what it is that I'm even saying. And then, of course, the first chapter, after the introduction, the first chapter starts right off with me digging through that box of cassettes at Heartland and finding those cassettes of what I thought of in my head at the time was Enrico Caruso and George Lama, but I realized it was Rocco Errico and George Lanza. But that took a while to comprehend that part.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's check in and see if Dr. Tim is with us, and if he is, see if he's got anything to share. Is Tim with us, Jeanie?
I do not see his number on, so he must not be, and nobody has their hand up.
Yeah, it's unusual for him to miss Aramaic Fridays. Cool. Well, do you have anything in mind today, Dale, to share with people from the Aramaic that might take us the next step? We've been doing this for several weeks now and touching on different parts, like skipping across the pond. What's the next stone to jump on in terms of really bringing the Aramaic into full fruition in our real world, our real lives, where we live?
A lot of the focus on the last section of the book that I was writing the first section of the book was about my story, and it was focused on how I was living a lot of these things even before I realized that they were, closer to the original meanings of what the Yeshua teachings in Aramaic. And the key of the first section is basically like, just do it. Just try making, conscious tone and see how it feels. The second part of the book focused on realizing, just unlocking a couple of real basic words, like the first word of the Gospel of John and Genesis, Bereshit, and unlocking that and showing people how there's such tremendous depth of nuance just in a single word that most people don't even barely have even the slightest idea of. So it's kind of peeling back the layers of what we think we know and, those intellectual concepts about the teachings, and realizing that there's an experiential core at the deepest level of when you really sort of go beyond normal translation, get to the experiential meaning. And then the third section of the book is actually me getting people toning basic sounds. And the gist, or the focus of the last section, is that it's not like it's some sort of a miracle in the way that we think of miracles today, or that toning is somehow, some kind of magic, so much as it's not about understanding what the words mean as much as it's about actually getting ourselves outside of what our head is thinking about the process and being able to have that open feminine perception of what these teachings could mean through the living of them, understanding that it's not about comprehending something intellectually, it's about putting it into practice, it's about doing the process. And I talk in that last section about several different Aramaic words, and I say in somewhere in each section of those 6 words from the teachings of Yeshua, I say it's not about having a full comprehension of what these mean and like doing the toning and then going, oh yeah, I see it now, I see it, so much as it's about just being open in the direct experience of the tone and letting that tone come through you, letting it live through you. Like as an example, you don't have to understand all the nuances of that worksheet that you passed bazillions of those around across this earth for the past few decades. It's not about understanding all of the process, especially not on the first go. It's about just doing it. It's about getting the pen to the paper, and it's about actually stepping into the footprints, so to speak, and going through the process itself. And I really focus a lot in the book on the difference between feminine and masculine. Masculine being, and this is something that not all linguists have a full comprehension of, the genderization within languages. Some, the furthest they can see is that it means boy, girl. And I mean some really leading-edge scholars. And then I started getting into different linguists and different kinds of scholars and researchers and experts, and so I started realizing that, you know, in most cases in language, the feminine is something that's directly experiential. It's the attitude, it's the ta, it's the perception, it's the direct state of being, whereas masculine would be something like the teaching, or like a thought system about a teaching would be considered masculine, or physically doing something would be considered more masculine, whereas what Yeshua was talking about wasn't so much in the process of physical doing as I was talking about doing. He was more speaking of being open in the feminine, the direct feminine experience as we do what we do, as we live our life, as we move through the worksheet process, as an example, or the forgiveness process. It's not about understanding all the different details about it. It's about actually doing the process, being open in the process, and allowing that present moment to speak to us in that openness, in the presence of the moment. And man, it's really time. It's time for us to grow up. It's time for us to let the Jesus story grow up. It's time to stop the bickering and the name-calling and this crazy homophobia and racism and all these crazy things that were supported completely by the Bible, wars and bombing and all of it. It's just time to get on with it. And like I say over and over, the younger generations, I'm thrilled to say that many of them are demanding that of us. They're just literally coming to me and saying, just hit me straight between the eyes, metaphorically, tell me exactly what's on the page, tell me all of the possible breadth of nuance of what it could mean, and then let me sort of, you know, make up the choice on my own about the direct realization of that. And that's what I do. And they're smart enough and they're brilliant enough that we don't need to pile more religious ideologies on them. We don't need to throw on more dogma and indoctrination and condition them in one system of thought or the other. We just need to get out of our own way, which will allow us to get out of their way and just let them shine as they are naturally. I see that as the next phase. It's almost like the generation of light has arrived, is one of the phrases that I've been using lately.
Right. Well, one of the things that is shocking, or ideas that I offer to many people, it's shocking to them at first because they've never had the experience, or if they've had the experience, they turn and walk away from it like it was something that never happened, and they stop striving to have that experience, but that literally our physiology, the human form, in the whole creation, the human form is designed, I would offer to people, to literally be plugged in, to be powered by, and to have the experience in the cellular structure of the active presence of the love of God. And some people get a taste of that and then go back to their minds and their dogmas and their doctrines and their hostilities and their fears and their blame games and how it's everybody else's fault that they're feeling what they're feeling, and that they're not experiencing that love, when the truth is our most natural state is to literally experience that love directly in every cell of our structure. And yet we don't have the brain cells deeply enough ingrained yet to recognize the value of that. And what we do have the brain cells for, what as we talked about in the workshop we did a couple of weeks ago, the manifest, what's obvious to people is that, there's a reason to blame you for my pain, and I'm in pain, and yeah, my pain goes back decades, but it's your fault today that I'm experiencing it. Therefore, I will withdraw from the experience of love. I will not honor the experience of love in me. I'm not even interested in the experience of love in me. What I'm interested in is my pain and my grief and my rage, and how it's all your fault. And in any given moment where it becomes important enough to someone, they can shift back to the presence of love rather than being hypnotized by the frequencies happening in their minds at the moment. For most people, whatever's firing off in their brain cell structure at any given moment is the truth for them. So if what's firing off is approval for somebody, they say words like, oh, I love you, you're so wonderful, et cetera, et cetera. And when hostility or fear comes up about the same object of attention, well, you're the cause of my pain, you're my trauma, it's all your fault, so why don't you just change, or why don't you do something to fix me? As opposed to, I'm experiencing pain. Gee, this is pain I knew long before I ever met you. Why am I blaming you for it right now? Maybe I need to stop and look at, my pain is surfacing. Perhaps this is my opportunity to own, actually step up to the plate, be responsible for, throw this pain away, and receive the blessing of the support that you're offering, and step into the role of a true human being of, I've had a taste of the active presence of love. I'm really going to honor that first. And to me, that's what all that Yeshua, he kept coming back to that. You know, he said to the scholars of the day, you swallow a gnat, or swallow a camel and strain a gnat. The focus on things that are meaningless relative to the direct experience of the presence of the love of God in our physiology, in our minds, in our emotions, and that we could be living there 24/7, 365, unless, of course, we come from generations and generations and generations who honor, worship, and serve something else. And, of course, you can always tell by the words what somebody honors, worships, and serves. And if their words are about fear and hostility, you know who their God is. And to me, Yeshua is trying to get us to be converted, to switch us back to the actual presence of love in us, the actual relationship with the Creator. How does that fit with what you're talking about from the experiential perspective that you're looking to share with people, Dale?
Well, you know, of course you know this, but the word repent in that Southern Baptist sense, that word is tubo in Aramaic, and what tubo means is to turn back. It means a 180-degree turn, literally that you're facing forward and that you literally turn back. What it really means on a deeper level is turn back within or turn back inside. A lot of people don't realize that the root of the word tuvo, which is repent, is the word tuv, which means on target. It means right. It means fully right, fully conscious in the present moment. And, you know, that gets me really thinking about, like, Einstein or Nikola Tesla or Edison. You know, when I think of the people that made these huge leaps in scientific thought, it wasn't about them just filtering things through their belief systems and sort of rehashing what they already knew that they learned from someone else, or even something that they learned themselves theoretically within their head and their mind and their intellect and their thoughts. But all three of them would actually take naps, and they would go into these deep states of meditation and go into the mystery. They would go into those places that are directly experiential, where they actually let go of everything that they knew, and they let go of all of their thought systems and their ideologies and all of the intellectual things. And it was actually by dipping down into the essence of who they are in truth, not in their head or in their physical mind, but actually in their own direct experience. That was when they were able to sort of dip into eternity, dip into the depths of cosmic meaning that was so far beyond anything that had already been pre-established, preconditioned, and set in the ideologies of science. And that's where all of these amazing things were coming, especially from these three guys. I would also pull Da Vinci in there too, Leonardo da Vinci, who also was known to sit and go into like altered states where he would sit for hours and then pop out of the state with this incredible, fully formed, completely new idea for a new gadget. You know, flying contraptions and all kinds of stuff, or even the mechanics of how the human body works. You know, Da Vinci was doing that same thing. And if we could just realize it's not about finding some kind of key that's based in thought, but just stepping into the process and doing it and understanding that, you know, to me, the forgiveness process is the ultimate recalibration. It's taking it off of the course of what we think we've got figured out about how our lives are supposed to function. And, of course, those people that we know, I can smile, the ones that we know, and maybe it was us at some point in our lives, that think that they've got it all figured out and they know everything. And you'll notice that there's always this push to push that ideology onto you, to convince you of what they know, which is just a complete sort of flashing red light to me saying, I don't have any of this figured out. I don't really have a clue, but in order to keep my structures of comfort in place and not allow anything to come up, not allow any of that unconscious dynamic to rise up to the surface, I'm just going to keep talking and I'm going to keep yakking and telling you how I've already got this whole thing figured out so that maybe you won't recognize that I don't have a clue about any of it. And I think that's where the real, true awakening happens, is in letting go and allowing ourselves to go back into that mystery, to have the question mark over our head, to realize we don't have it all figured out, that we allow ourselves to be recalibrated by her, by Ruach HaKodesh, by that all-embracing breath of Allah, that the eternal, non-created yet creative force, the force that we cannot sense with our five senses, but yet she does that work of recalibrating us back to truth as a direct experience, not truth as an ideological framework of thoughts in our head that we've been conditioned with. And it's to me, it's like the key of one of the things that I really want to get across, to bring sort of the right and the left sides of the scholarly field together in one way or another, is to help everybody realize that we're going to have to get to a point where we say, that the mystics, that are the ones that are at least on the deeply experiential end, as it appears, have to understand that they, need, it's somehow essential on the other side for them to have some of the scholarly work so that they can at least have even a rudimentary understanding of what these things mean, not just experientially, but including in our mind, because we are human beings as well. But I think if there's anything, it's really to sort of melt the hearts and open the minds of those on the sort of more on the left, sort of ultra head intellect side, the heavy scholarly expert side, and say, look, maybe there is something that you don't have completely figured out. Maybe there are blurred sections and gray areas that we've defined, when in truth we don't actually know what those gray areas are. And that's sort of what I'm saying is, look, these don't need to have 100% clear definitions in an intellectual way. It's just, do we have that deep realization of it? That's what self-actualization, means in the Abraham Maslow sense, that it's not just that I have a mental understanding of what it means in my thoughts, but that I'm actually living it. And yet in the living of it, that doesn't necessarily mean that I've got all the details figured out. It just means that I'm willing to be in that direct experience and to live it. And like I say, the young ones, they're coming in. I believe young ones have always come in like this, but the conditioning has been so intense for so long that, at a very young age, I believe it was 4 that you had said, basically they're walking dead. And it's changing now where we're opening up enough, and a lot of those we realize that the politicians aren't always telling the truth. We realize that the economists aren't always telling the truth. We realize that the religious figures aren't always telling the truth. And we're not just believing everything that's served up to us on a shiny plate. We're actually going in and finding the deeper aspects in our hearts. And it's just an honor to me to be a part of this, to be able to open that up and tell groups of people, I'm not really here for you, I'm here for your children, not to steal them and run away with them, but to help you let go and be more authentic in your being so that these children can be who they are already naturally, and we can allow them to shine rather than, of course you want to say, hey, don't run out into the road. There's certain things, there's going to be conditioning. But one of the things that's big for me is in the Lakota culture, as an example, a lot of the Plains tribes and indigenous cultures, like the Aborigines in Australia, they don't go and look at their children and say, this is a tree, this is a dog, this is a rock. They say, we call this a tree, we call this a rock, we call this a dog, we call this a cat. And even that alone is enough of a sort of unplugging from that heavy conditioning to just be able to let them kids realize, hey, look, it's less important that you've got the system figured out. It's more important that you're open into the direct experience of this moment. And you can't be directly open in the moment if you're stuck in some kind of religious or theological framework in your head, because that doesn't exist there. I've loved it in the last 10 years or so in the Why Again workshops, how you've been talking about being versus non-being. When you first did that, it was like this huge light went on in my head, because I had a huge ground base before I even met you in Buddhism. I was actually on the verge of becoming a Buddhist monk, actually, at the ripe old age of 21. But it awakened so much in me about in Buddhism between the being and the non-being. I thought, wow, look at that. And the intellect, not a bad thing, just it is what it is. And it's a recording system that just samples little bits of information, and it's not a direct experience in itself. But when we believe that mental cognitive experience, which is the finger pointing at the moon, when we think that finger pointing at it is the moon itself, that's when we fall asleep. And it's time to wake up. We are waking up. It's just awesome. It's awesome. I'm a little bit excited.
It sounds like
You refer to that fairly often to the finger pointing at the moon, Dale, and for some people that may not have the brain cells, maybe you could say a little bit more about that.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because there are times that, to me, it seems so clear, but there are times that I've said that in gatherings of people, and I see people going, what, the finger pointing at the moon? I love the way Eckhart Tolle explains it. He talks about, I'm not sure which DVD, I think it's in Practicing Presence, which is like this 5-disc set for teachers and spiritual counselors, whatever. Anyway, he talks about how, you've had a dog and you've had this dog for 10 years, and you throw a ball to the other side of the room, and the dog, even if you've had this dog for 10 years, especially, some dogs, let's be honest, some dog breeds aren't quite as sharp as others. Some aren't the sharpest tool in the shed. And with certain breeds or even just certain animals, you'll throw the ball to the other side of the room, and they'll be looking at your finger, and you'll be like, it's there. There it is. It's there. I'm pointing at it. I'm pointing at the ball. And when you look down, the dog's not looking over at the ball on the other side of the room. He's looking at your finger. And that's exactly what we've done with the teachings of Yeshua. We've obsessed about him as a human being, as a physical walking on earth person, and somehow, that he had something that we don't have, which, of course, would mean that he lied, because he said, you can do all that I've done and even greater things, but we can just wipe that off to the side and say, look, it's about understanding that I can point at the moon all I want, and it doesn't mean that my finger is the moon. What I love is in the Kabbalist Codex, Enlightenment, I'm not sure if it was you that wrote it, but talking about the chocolate and how you can talk about chocolate. You can write an entire book. We can have a documentary that's 5 hours long, and we can preserve it for thousands of years. And let's just say, don't hate me for saying this, that, chocolate somehow gets wiped off the face of the earth, and there's no more cacao beans anywhere, so chocolate is gone. So 1,000 years down the road, we wrote a 300-book series.
Wait a minute. Now you're taking out one of the sacred cows here.
Oh, chocolate. I can't attack chocolate. Well, I'm not attacking chocolate, but let's say we write 1,000 pages in each of 300 volumes, and we do a 5-hour documentary all about the taste of chocolate. And yet, no matter what we say, there's no words that we can put down on the page that will ever equal the taste of, especially, I'll say this specifically, raw, unprocessed chocolate. You're mixing them with a little bit of raw cocoa butter, a little raw coconut oil, tiny bit of agave, maybe a little bit of sea salt, and you'll just whip that up, put it in the freezer, and you put that in your mouth. There's nothing like that experience. There's no way you can put that experience of chocolate into words. You can say, oh, well, it tastes kind of like this, or it tastes kind of like that, but it's still not the chocolate itself. And that's kind of the essence of the finger is not the moon. We've obsessed with the Jesus finger, and we've missed the point. Not all of us, of course. So many have missed the point that it's not about memorizing any kind of translation, including from Aramaic. It's not about memorizing lines, although there may be part of that we do. It's about actually comprehending not some intellectual thought-based ideology of what the words mean, but it's about actually understanding, how do I live this? How do I actually come into that feminine nature of my being and be open in the perception of this present moment through the philosophies that have been laid forth, not just in the Jesus teachings, but in Buddhism and Hinduism, in whatever it may be. They'll all say that in those Yeshua teachings in Aramaic, there's things said there that are so incredibly clear, more clear than anywhere I've ever seen anything of that kind pop up, especially in forgiveness. But the Buddha got so close, really close when he was speaking of suffering, that he didn't quite completely get into removing the root of my suffering in the way that Yeshua did through forgiveness. And then we got it. We got it on a silver platter. We got it really clear a couple thousand years ago. And then we threw a bunch of dirt on top of it, and we mistranslated it, and we threw some other ideologies, and we tried to fertilize it because we realized we were killing it off. And then to this point, we've got this little sort of dead seed on the plate, and we've got to be able to bring it back into some fertile soil and put some of that, water back on it and let it grow. It's time. I mean, you and I, you've been doing this for much longer than I have, and you've obviously got to be able to see that it's, the system is quite a bit more streamlined now than it was 30, 40 years ago. If I was alive in the 50s, I would have already been snuffed out, and it would have looked like an accident, quote unquote, ha-ha, I already would have been silenced, I think. And now with the internet and so many people having this information, it's getting out there in such a way that we can't stop it, and there's no reason to want to stop it. We've all talked about the 100th monkey and critical mass, etc. It's happening. It's happening right now. There's Reiki in hospitals. There's meditation in hospitals. There's just things that we never could have thought would happen 40 years ago. Look at it. We're in the middle of it, and our children are growing up in what is simultaneously a more restrictive culture than ever, yet also there's this undercurrent that is it's truly open, and it's based on liberty, not on some sort of fictitious freedom that exists in our head, but true liberty and justice and accountability, not from a place of you paying for what I don't want to acknowledge in myself, but being able to make, people who do whatever the crazy things are in culture, and to be accountable for those things outside of what our physical issue or our mental and emotional issues are with what they've done. It's all happening right now.
For sure, and the chocolate that we're inviting people to taste. The culture invites people to taste rage and guilt and fear and pain and abuse and drama and blame of everybody else for people who are tasting those things. The invitation of Yeshua and the invitation of this work is to taste of the active presence of the love of God. Literally, that in that energetic field, we live, move, and have our being, and the fact that we're made of the same stuff, if we'll stop long enough, if we'll be out of our minds, if we'll stop the blame game, then we can go back to that direct taste. And then, having had a taste of the chocolate, having had a taste of the active presence of the love of God, we can start to value that above all else. The culture has taught us to value a billion other things and forget that, when what we're inviting people to do is to build the brain cells where you're willing to choose that relationship over the relationship with hostility, fear, and blame. And all you have to do that is overcome 1,000 generations of people who tasted their hostility, their fear, their war, their blame, their guilt, their drama, their trauma, their condemnation, their sinnership. People have been tasting that for generations and generations and pounding it into the heads of each new generation that comes, and leaving behind the taste of the love of God and real, literally in physiology, becomes the key and where we want to head. So that's to me the idea of the chocolate story, is to recognize that we can be tasting this, but not if we value something else. And of course, you've got to have, as Yeshua said, the eyes to see and the ears to hear in order to go there. And he wasn't talking, I don't think, about physical eyes and ears. He was talking about you had to have the content in brain cells. And the example I use is the dog with an ounce of gold on the plate and a pound of hamburger. And, of course, the dog's got a choice. The dog could walk out with the gold and buy 1,500 pounds of hamburger, but there isn't a dog in the world that's going to do that. Every dog is going to chow down on the hamburger. Why? Because that's all they have the brain cells for. They don't have the brain cells for something higher. People who live in hostility, fear, guilt, sinnership, and blame don't have the brain cells for something higher. And so they can't choose something higher. And even when it's right there in front of them, being offered them, the support is being offered to them to let go of the past, to let go of, now that the hostility, fear, grief, rage, pain has surfaced, to let go of it and take hold of this direct relationship with the Creator, this direct relationship with love. They don't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear it, and it's impossible for them to choose. And so, of course, as we build the brain cells, it becomes more and more an option to really, truly choose this active presence of love and to forgive or remove our fetish with everything else. It's an interesting project to invite people into that, and even to get them to the point where they can conceive of picking up the ounce of gold instead of the hamburger. And, of course, the hamburger is the pain, the drama, the trauma, the blame of everybody else for the fact that I'm experiencing it. And, you know, why am I experiencing trauma? Because in my structure is trauma. Why am I talking about somebody else when I'm experiencing trauma? Because I don't want to own my trauma. I want to pretend that it belongs to somebody else, which is the very thing that cuts me off from being able to heal it. And so we want to open the space to support people in building the brain cells to hear it, to really, truly hear that selecting the active presence of love is always a possibility.
Mm.
Maybe we want to just check and see if anything's happening in the chat room, if Dr. Tim has joined us, or if there's a hand up in the phone queue.
Nobody has their hand up, and Dr. Tim has not joined us yet. And we're down to about 12 minutes. So if anybody out there has a question about the Aramaic for Dale or Michael, press 1 and you're first in line without waiting.
Cool. And anything happening in the chat room that we might want to be aware of?
Well, Peace and I are talking back and forth. Everybody else is a guest, and so they can't write. They can just listen and read. And Peace and I are talking about kind of the same thing that you're talking about. I said, you got to keep the chocolate. And we talked about that the chocolate is like love. You can't describe it. You do have to experience it. And it's like the matrix that when you were talking about what we live, move, and have our being, it's the matrix that we exist in. And we do have to listen with something other than our physical ears. So that was kind of our same conversation. So it was a lot like what you were just saying.
It's an interesting thought. I was just saying, can you imagine if let's just imagine you're a kid, you're 6 years old, and you've got a father who's constantly talking about love. You must love your neighbor as yourself. That in which you judge another, you are guilty of practicing. And he's got all these great Jesus lines memorized, and yet he smacks you around. And you say something, you're just expressing how your heart feels, and he'll punch you and push you down, cancel the thought. And imagine that, they're constantly spitting out words, talking about love. Love is this, love is that, love is the beauty in a flower, love is this. And then you bring home a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and he takes them and he cuts the tops off of them and smashes them into the carpet. It's kind of what we've done with the Jesus teachings. We talk about it endlessly until we're blue in the face. And literally, it's the finger pointing at the moon, and it means nothing. Not that the talking about it means nothing, but if our being is not in line, if the state of our being, if our direct experience, if we're not coming from that space of love, it really doesn't mean anything, because no matter what we say about the teachings of Yeshua or any spiritual teaching or love or chocolate or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter if we're not open within the experience of what that really means inside of our hearts. And it's what's happening. It's what's happening on the cultural level is that older, stodgy stuff is cracking and falling away, and it looks like lots of things are falling apart. And as they should be, as they are, we're missing that there's this, not us necessarily, but so many are missing the beautiful flower that's birthing through this soil that's being displaced and pushed off to the side. And it's the old arid soil that's being pushed away, and yet that flower is wrapped and basking and clothed in this gorgeous, fertile, rich earth that is, allowing this seed to finally come to bloom. We didn't see it. It was under the surface of all of the cultural preconditions. But here it is. It's right now, and it's alive inside of every single one of us. And if we could just keep going and not stop, do the forgiveness process, actually live this, and exemplify this love out into our lives, we won't even recognize the world in 30 years, much like we probably couldn't recognize today's world in relation to 30 years ago. So we're right there. We're right on the edge.
True. Very true.
Awesome. You got a caller for us, Steve?
Yes, 541. Who do we have?
Oh, hi, it's Julie from Ashland, Oregon. Hello.
Good.
Am I coming in all right? I'm driving.
You're loud and clear.
Okay. I think I have an example of what you're talking about. Actually, two examples. I was experiencing frustration about the fact that this is a talk radio program, and sometimes it's at the level of talk and concepts, and other times it's more experiential. And so finally I turned that inward and said, well, what's my experience and what could I share and bring to the show that's not just talk? So here it is. I've been getting more politically oriented, and it's just been unfolding. And I went to a meeting yesterday, and I was actually invited to run for city council, which is scary for me. Well, there you go. I'm labeling it. I'm going to let that go.
Something outside of you scaring?
What?
Something outside of you is scaring you?
Right. Yes. No. So, no. It's inside me, recognizing that there's an opportunity for me to create what I have inside me stirring. So,
right.
So along with all that exciting new design creation possibility opportunity, there is what comes up. And so what I'm noticing is that the scene that plays out in front of me in the old paradigm world of how politics are done is just as unsure of where it's going as I am. It's an exact reflection of me not knowing how I'm going to design what it is I'm asking them to design, you know? So I now see that there's an opportunity for me to actually just get in there and do what needs to be done with them, and nobody knows what it is yet. And so that's good. That's just owning it and recognizing it's fresh ground, and we will be borrowing from what we already know, and perhaps, we will undo what doesn't work anymore and find what will work now. So that means that I have to really, for me, I'm getting an image that it's the undoing. It is the Aramaic forgiveness. It's the untying and loosening up what we've been doing and allowing light and truth to go to work for us. So it's just real intricate to undo some of the things that keep us suffocated and bound up by old paradigm. And I guess this is a great opportunity, and I don't know what else to say except that the experience of, oh my goodness, this is here now, and I need to participate at an experiential level rather than projecting onto them what I want them to do for me. I actually have to be the change I want to see. So that's my input.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
All right. So am I willing to do the inner work in order to reflect in the outer is the key. And
when Julie mentioned, I was just going to say when she was mentioning the intricate undoing, that had me thinking of one of the meanings of shvuk, shwach, shvag, of forgiveness in Aramaic is like untying a knot. Kind of like you've got like a little spool full of, say, shoelace or something, and you've got to kind of work work it against itself. You kind of use it like against itself, kind of pushing it against itself very gently to be able to sort of work it in and work it out and work it in and work it out and become something that's very intricate, where if you just try to pull it or cut it, it's not the same as being able to actually use its own kinetic energy to unlock itself, to release the knots that are in there. And that's kind of what the forgiveness process is like. It's not always something that's real cut and dried and simple and bang, here it is. A lot of times it's something that is very intricate and has very, very many threads to it. Kind of like if you want to get a rope through the eye of a needle, you're going to have to do it one thread at a time, working it against itself rather than trying to jam a big, huge, thick rope through the eye of a needle. Same thing, and it is, there's a support system here for anyone that's willing to do that, and that includes me.
Definitely what it's all about, and that's definitely what we're here to support for everyone, and of course for us to learn as well, because when you recognize the enormity of the challenge, all you're doing is looking at 1,000 generations of the pharisaical mind, and the pharisaical mind is the mind that speaks, and on the outside everything looks good, but on the inside there's something different happening. And then when the pharisaical mind is confronted with what it holds inside of it, the first thing it tends to do is to go into denial. It talks about somebody else. Look at what you made me feel. Well, but why are you feeling it? Because I did something, or because it was in you? If it was in you, then thank me for showing it to you and work through it, rather than, go off on the rabbit trail of it's all your fault that I'm experiencing this. No, it's nobody's fault. It's just what's there. And if I'm in touch with it, that's the point at which I can get a hold of that little sucker and throw it out. I can forgive it. But what the mind will tend to do, what the non-being mind will tend to do is, I'll just run off into what I usually do. I'll get busy. I'll do, my regular drug. I'll do my caffeine. I'll do my fifth of scotch. Give me a hit of pot. Give me some nicotine. Give me some work to do. And then I can pretend that this isn't going on inside of me, and I can avoid it until it quiets down and goes away. And I've just missed an awesome opportunity when it's up in my face to forgive, to remove what never belonged. And so we're delighted to be here with you, and we are down to the last few seconds, and DaleAllenHoffman.com is the website to reach Dale, and we're delighted that you're with us. We invite you to create the best year yet of your eternal life, and Addie has something to say to us. What did you want to say, Addie? Did you want to say goodbye to everybody?